Hmm. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to, I say this every week, a book course, the Buddhist Path of Awakening course, as we work our way through the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma. We're in volume 3, and we're moving into part 3, the Tülku principle and the Trungpa Tulkus. So tonight, Barry is going to present. Mr. Cunningham, take it away.
Here I am.
Should we bow in?
Yes. Let me make one small adjustment here. Okay. It's been a long time since I occupied this chair. So the Tülku principle. He starts out by saying that having discussed the principle of Vajramaster Guru, we could discuss the Trungpa lineage and how the idea of Tulkus or our incarnate lamas fits in our discussion of the Vajrayana. The principle of lineage is very important. In our heritage, it is what we have received. And this is one of the main takeaways I got from this rather brief chapter, is that it is all about lineage, about the transmission of the teachings. So he talks about some of the different schools or lineages, especially Kagyu and Nyingma. Now, there were actually many schools and lineages of teachings in Tibet, but the four primary ones, which are there now, are actually in order, in chronological order, are Nyingma, which is the oldest, Kagyu, Sakya, and Golug, which that last being the lineage of the Dalai Lama, by the way. And in general, they are kind of in two categories. The Nyingma and Kagyu are practice lineages, and in general are more experiential. Sakya and Golug are more about intellectual scholarship, development of prajna, which in the Vajrayana becomes curiosity, actually. And he says Kagyu vision is like seeing colors. The Nyingma vision is like focusing, which helps you to see the precision of colors. Kagyu and Nyingma are almost like one tradition. It is said that they are like using two eyes in order to see. It then goes on to say that the forms of meditation we use here, the shrine, the way we sit, all of this has come down through the lineage. Now, Kagyu and Nyingma are two distinct lineages, each with his own line of teachers, emphasis on certain practices, and the lineage chant we do that we just did before meditation. This is the Nyingma lineage, the Kagyu lineage chant. The Nyingma is quite different people. However, Chogyam Trungpa, although being Kagyu, his primary teacher was Nyingma, Jagman Control of Sechen. And I can't help but think that his take on those two lineages being so closely connected has to do with the fact that he brought teachings from both of those lineages into what we've been receiving. Kagyu is about compassion. We begin with meditation, and through that practice, develop compassion. Then the realization of our true nature comes next. Nyingma is a bit of a different tack. It's more intellectual. it's about the development of wisdom and prajna, as I've said. But of course, he says here, they're almost like one tradition. Now, the three kayas and the Tülku principle. The Tülku principle is connected, I'm just reading here, with the Guru and Yidam principles, and particularly with the Vajrayana concept of the Trikaya, or the bodies of enlightenment. And these are something have been presented here several times, of course. That is the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. And a little surprise to me, which I hadn't known. Well, I gotta say, I guess I knew because I have gone through this material before, but it was as if I had never heard it, that Nirmanakaya, the Tibetan word Tülku means Nirmanakaya. So the Nirmanakaya is the physical manifestation of enlightenment. And that's what a Tülku is. And then he talks in here a little bit later that there are several types of Tülkus, that there are even images of the Buddha that are regarded as Tülkus. So my take on that is that, yeah, it's an expression of enlightenment. So he says the idea of three bodies of the kayas is very simple. It is that enlightened state has three levels. So now there are several types of Tülkus. You know, there was the Buddha, for instance, as I just said, even images of the Buddha. And in here, he says another type of Tülku is one who continues to be reborn again and again in order to help beings on various levels. Now, this to me sounds an awful lot like an enlightened bodhisattva. Maybe John would want to speak to that, but this is the way I had always understood the nature of a bodhisattva. A true enlightened bodhisattva is someone who, when they die, chooses to return. The good intentions of the Buddhas extend to all world realms, but in general, the enlightened ones find that the human beings are the most workable. Humans speak languages, they have developed intelligence, they have complicated social systems, and they also experience pain more acutely. And I'm reminded of, you know, our lineage chant, which starts by saying renunciation is the foot of meditation. Actually, the original translation was revulsion is the foot. And of course, that's also what is said in the First Noble Truth. Truth is suffering, is what leads us to the path. Now, the Tibetan Tülku system. Tibetan tradition of discovering Tülkus involves identifying incarnate lamas or proclaiming that someone is the Tülku of so-and-so. In this system, there are various types of incarnate lamas and various types of rebirth taking place. And he then goes on to talk about three types of Tülkus: blessed Tülkus, anonymous Tülkus, and direct Tülkus. Now, I always thought that all Tülkus were direct, that, you know, when some teachers, a Tülku, passed on, then an incarnation of that person would appear at some point. But what I'm seeing here is that actually the most common type is the blessed Tülku, who is where a Tülku, an enlightened teacher, transmits some of his or her spiritual energy, of a certain type to someone, and what he's saying is someone who isn't quite there on the path. And that then when that person dies and is reincarnated, they are the incarnation of the original Tülku. So what it means is that most commonly what happens is that a Tülku will choose their enlightenment ahead of time. And jumping ahead a little bit, there's also anonymous Tülkus, which is after a Tülku has done that and then they pass on, well, they can come back, but won't necessarily manifest as present themselves as a teacher. So there can be a kind of a splitting here. I found this very interesting. So anyway, what he says, which he probably presents as better than I am, in this case, the teacher chooses someone to bless. They may choose the person who is closest to them, or bless some passing bodhisattva who has not quite attained the highest level of the bhumis, which are the levels of development of enlightenment. The teacher or current Tülku blesses that person by taking a certain type of spiritual energy that transcends ego, enlightened energy, in other words, and then transferring this energy to the chosen person. This person then comes back in the next life as an incarnation of the previous Tülku. So although he or she is a different person, there is spiritual continuity taking place. And to me, this is kind of the crux of it here. The spiritual continuity is really what the whole Tülku system is about. It's what the lineage is about. Blessed Tülkus have to be raised and educated. In other words, they don't hit the ground running, so to speak. There's potential there, but they do need to be trained and educated. Since they are recognized as a Tülku of some previous teacher, they have more potential for realization than an ordinary person. So these young Tülkus have a great deal of potential, but they are not quite realized yet. Therefore, they have to go through training and education. And with training, and because of the spiritual energy that has been put in them, they can then begin to come up to the level of their previous incarnation. Now he says, while a transfer of spiritual energy is possible, we ordinary people cannot transfer energy in this way because we believe ourselves to be one entity. See, and there's that old hang-up of believing in this self, right? I find this stuff very interesting. In spite of philosophical indoctrination about egolessness, we still believe in the self. So we find it very difficult to split our personality unless we become schizophrenic. Okay. But this is interesting. The principle of the Blessed Tülku shows us that there may be a higher level of splitting personality, not into just one person, but into many. In this splitting, usually the body, speech, mind, quality, and action aspects of a particular being are transferred and can be transferred into 5 different people. And there are examples in the past of great teachers who have 5 incarnations later on. Some may specialize in scholarship, he says, others in contemplation, others in the activity of propagating the Dharma, and so forth. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Karmapa and all the other Tulkus you may be familiar with seem to be of the Blessed Tülku type. And according to him, this is by far the most common type of Tülku. And he reiterates that they need to go through various trainings. And here is a key point. Otherwise, if if in each incarnation were either already totally enlightened when they were born, or if they had to begin all over again, it would defeat the purpose of the Tülku system. So this is about continuity. If in each life a teacher had to struggle from the ground up, it would seem to contradict the perpetuation or furtherance of the development of enlightenment. And I think that phrase bears repeating, the development of enlightenment, which of course can refer to an individual as a blessed Tülku being trained, but also to the development of the teachings over time, that this is a living tradition. You know, there can never be a true Buddhist Bible because it's always changing over time and place. Furtherance of the development of enlightenment. Anonymous Tülkus. You might ask what happens to those people who have already injected their essence and their wisdom into somebody else. What happens to the original people? And then he goes on to say that these people may come back as Tülkus who do not necessarily advertise the fact, who do not necessarily take on the role of a great teacher or any of that. They could be your auto mechanic, your plumber, your lover, maybe one of you. Raise your hand. Okay, I see you, Karen. So this is interesting. And he says, such secretly real incarnate persons have no problem at all. Their sanity cannot be undermined because anything that happens in their life is a reminder of their intelligence, of their enlightenment. I love it. That sounds great. And I will relate this story that we have, I think has been presented here, but of, where is it? That Chogyam Trungpa, one day in a park, sitting on a bench, and nearby he noticed a bum, a homeless person, began a conversation and asked him, "What do you do?" And the guy said, "Oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, I travel." Chogyam asked him, "Are you happy?" The guy thought for a minute and he said, "That question doesn't seem to come up." And he took this as an anonymous Tülku. Here's someone who is just here. And then we have direct Tülkus, which is what I thought all Tülkus were anyway. And these are interesting. He starts out by saying, with such Tülkus, very little training is needed. However, a little further on, he says, direct incarnations need a lot of special attention. And I'm just going to leave that there for discussion because I didn't quite put that one together. And at this point, I would like to hand this off to John. Sorry, John, but there you go.
Okay. Yeah, this is all about lineage and compassion. And the Tülkus come back are reborn out of compassion for sentient beings in order to help us confused sentient beings to achieve enlightenment and release from suffering. That's the whole point of the Tülku system. And these Tülkus are very, in themselves, enlightened people. Now, you might think that compassion is the province of the Bodhisattva, and that, when the Bodhisattva passes on through the bhumis and achieves full enlightenment, that things change. But no, the compassion of the Bodhisattva continues right on through the Vajrayana. And in fact, sometimes you might see a wheel of life showing the 6 realms, and it's held by Yama, this demon who is the Lord of Death. And in these realms, there are the 6 realms. There's the God realm, the human realm, the jealous God realm, animal, hungry ghost, hell realm. In each realm, there is, in some versions of the wheel of life, show a Buddha standing at the edge of the realm or even in the realm, because there is always a Buddha to help the beings of these realms progress along toward enlightenment. Now, at one point in this presentation, he pointed out that the human realm is the realm that is most conducive to achieving enlightenment. And in fact, there are different versions of this. Sometimes it's said that the beings of the other realms, the God realm, the jealous God realm, hell realm, and so forth, actually don't have the physical and mental equipment necessary to achieving enlightenment. The gods, for instance, lack some of the interior subtle body that human beings have, and so can't achieve enlightenment in the body of a god, and likewise in the body of a hell being. Another version of this has it that the human realm is the best for proceeding to enlightenment because it has the best combination of suffering and intelligence. We've got enough suffering to make us want to practice, study, and progress along the path, and enough intelligence that we aren't completely consumed with our suffering, like a hell being. A hell being is just consumed with fear and anger and hatred and pain. A god, on the other hand, is completely blissed out and has no motivation to tread the path. Human beings have the right combination of enough suffering to motivate them and enough intelligence so that they can actually do it. Now, the 3 kayas and the Tülku principle. The word Tülku, the Dalai Lama is a Tülku, the Karmapa is a Tülku, Trungpa Rinpoche is a Tülku. There are many Tülkus. Most Rinpoches, most people who carry the title Rinpoche are Tülkus. Tülku means a reincarnated, enlightened being who's come back for the benefit of sentient beings. It's the Tibetan for Nirmanakaya, as Barry pointed out, these 3 bodies of the Buddha. The Dharmakaya, which is the most ethereal, you might say, it's really the equivalent of utter reality. It's shunyata, it's space. And out of the Dharmakaya emerges the manifestations that we see. The first to emerge is the Sambhogakaya, and then from that comes the Nirmanakaya. And the Nirmanakaya is like a human being. In fact, the Buddha was a Nirmanakaya. Any Tülku, because the word Tülku just simply means Nirmanakaya. But if you go to a more abstract version of these, the Dharmakaya is the body of reality. The Sambhogakaya is the body of communication, how reality communicates, speech, you might say, meaning, words. And the Nirmanakaya is the body of compassion. That's what a Tülku is. Tülku, Nirmanakaya, Tibetan, Sanskrit, and they mean the body of compassion. Compassion how? Compassion for us. They come back to help us on the path. I want to point out too, talking about these anonymous Tülkus. These are people who just, they're born, and they're born as geniuses. No, that's a direct Tülku, actually. But it's very close to what an anonymous Tülku is. These are people who don't come back and they're not recognized as being religious leaders. Trungpa Rinpoche, for your amusement perhaps, always said that when he died, he didn't want to come back as a teacher. Now, this was during the heyday of Japanese technology, Sony, Matsushita, all the rest. And he said he wanted to come back to be reborn as a Japanese scientist. Now, that may sound eccentric, but the fact is that in the Vajrayana, there is a transformation that takes place. In the Mahayana, prajna means transcendent knowledge, knowledge of things as they are, seeing things clearly. And Trungpa Rinpoche always said that when the practitioner or the person on the path treader enters the Vajrayana and achieves enlightenment, prajna is transformed. It's no longer a tool for achieving enlightenment because enlightenment is already achieved. Now it becomes a delight and curiosity, a delight in and curiosity about this world, this universe, this cosmos, a constant play, a constant exploration. And so the practitioner at this point is constantly dancing with reality and exploring it. And that's so when Rinpoche said he wanted to come back as a Japanese scientist, I took it in that vein. This idea that some lamas come back, they're so highly developed, they come back as 5. The reason they come back as 5 is, you see, we talk about the Trikaya, the 3 bodies of the Buddha. Sometimes they talk about 5 bodies of the Buddha. It's the mind, which is the Dharmakaya, the speech, which is the Sambhogakaya, and the body, the physical body, or the manifestation, which is the Nirmanakaya. And then there are 2 more, which have to do with, what are they? Body, speech, mind, quality of the Buddha, and action, what the Buddha does. In fact, Trungpa Rinpoche's own guru, Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen, was a reincarnation of the great 19th century Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Taye, whose name means Jamgon Kongtrul. Well, he had many names, but that particular one means boundless intellect, Lodro Taye. And when he died, he had 5 incarnations, of whom Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen, Trungpa Rinpoche's guru, was one. So we are in this world of enlightened beings who have come back out of compassion for us. Let's see what else I might have to add to this. Memories of previous lifetimes. Trungpa Rinpoche was asked as he was growing up, especially when he was a child, if he had memories of previous lives, because his monks wanted to know. They were curious, they wanted confirmation. And in fact, he did. He said as he grew older, they evaporated, those memories. But when he was quite small, he did have memories that he took to be memories of previous lives when asked by his monks. He says, usually at the level of puberty, such memories begin to disappear because you begin to relate with the world. Before that, you're still a past-oriented infant. So we, on the other hand, because we believe in ourselves as discrete entities, lose the memories of our previous lives, for the most part, very rapidly. There are people who remember previous lives, and there are people who do past life regressions. He tells stories. He told stories to us too, that he had things that happened to him that were sort of echoes of his previous lives. And then, of course, there was his explanation of why he drank so much. He said that in his past life, one explanation, the one we all liked, was that in his past life as the 10th Trungpa Rinpoche, he'd been a great ascetic. And perhaps the pendulum had to swing all the way over to the other side, and now he was a great dissolute, drinker and womanizer. I think that the lesson for us is that we can share in the mind of the Tülku, which is the mind of enlightenment. And we can do that by simply coming present. We can do that through transmission with a teacher. When a teacher shares his or her mind with us, and we see the clarity of Rigpa, of pure awareness, and that this is communicated and passed down from one person to the next. The Tülku system is a system of recognizing that transmission and its embodiment in human beings. So I'll stop there and we could have a discussion. We've entered into the realm of the magical Vajrayana. Lane.
I have 3 questions tonight. Firstly, one thing you said, John, was that most Rinpoches are Tulkus. Did you really mean to say most? I thought all Rinpoches were Tulkus.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Probably.
Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, you also talked about Trungpa Rinpoche wanting to return as a Japanese scientist. Is that to imply that a Tulku has some sort of choice as regarding how they will reincarnate?
Absolutely.
How they will.
They do.
What's that?
They do. Yes, they do have some choice. I mean, that's the whole idea of this blessed Tülku, that the present enlightened being picks someone that they like, that they think is a good pick, and they inject their essence into that person. And then when that person dies, they're going to be reborn as the next incarnation of this person who injected it. That's the blessed Tülku. So yeah, they inject it. Now, I want to tell you too that there are people who find Tulkus. There's a movie about, I saw it some years ago, about a fellow who sets off on a journey to find the reincarnation of his teacher. And it was set in Tibet, and it was a Tibetan movie, I think.
Kundun?
Huh?
Kundun? Kundun.
How do you spell it?
Kundun.
I'm not sure. Might be.
That's all about that. I'm wrong. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And my third question, if you're finished with your thought, did you finish your thought, John?
There was something else I wanted to tell you about that Trungpa Rinpoche told us, and it'll come to me. Oh yeah, people like the Karmapa may or may not have the talent to find Tulkus. So the 16th Karmapa I know did, and it would come to him in meditation, and he would call some of his monks together, and he would say, go to this particular village. He would have a vision, you see, in meditation. And he said, go to this particular village, and there you will find a house with a red door facing south. I'm making this up, right? But it would be something like that. And in that house, you will find a mother and a father and a small child. And that's the reincarnation of so-and-so. And the Karmapa and other great teachers could do this. And then these people would be sent, and they would go, and they would find the house with the red door in the village, in that particular village facing south, and they would go in, and there would be the child, and they would apply tests. So the tests would be like this, that they would show this infant or this toddler or whatever it was, the child, people known to the previous incarnation as well as people who were not known to the previous incarnation. And if the child gravitated towards the ones who were known, that would indicate that they were the reincarnation of that teacher. And then it would also show the child objects that belonged to the previous incarnation, as well as objects that didn't. And again, if the child gravitated towards the objects that were known to the previous incarnation, that was taken to indicate that this was the true rebirth. And that's how reincarnations were found, by teachers doing that. So one of the ways. Now, when I first met Trungpa Rinpoche, he felt that the Karmapa was no longer reliable on this, that his pronouncements about who was a reincarnation were very suspect and were tainted by the diaspora and the need to find Tülkus in order to continue the lineage. He felt that the Karmapa was under pressure to find them, and that his findings were no longer reliable. That was when I first met Trungpa Rinpoche in 1970. Then in 74, the Karmapa came to this country, and Rinpoche completely reversed and said, he is changed. He has become what he is supposed to be. And Trungpa Rinpoche was absolutely full of devotion for the Karmapa and felt that he had become what he had, was supposed to be, and that his pronouncements now were reliable, and he expressed great devotion to the Karmapa, and he got organized all of us into a great celebration for the Karmapa's arrival. So these things happen.
And my last question regards the Blessed Tülku. It was mentioned that the word Tülku literally means, it's a Tibetan word for Nirmanakaya. So what's actually going on in terms of the Nirmanakaya with regards to the Blessed Tülku, when the Rinpoche connects somehow with his spiritual heir or his heart disciple? Are there Nirmanakayas merging in some way? Because it implies that the Nirmanakaya is what gets reincarnated, right? If Tülku means Nirmanakaya, I'm assuming that's what gets reincarnated.
Well, we all get reincarnated, every one of us. Mm-hmm. And the only question is that a Nirmanakaya is an enlightened being who may, or mostly, I think, has control over whether or not he's going to be, he or she, reincarnated in a body. Some Tülkus, when they die, they just disappear into the Dharmakaya, absolute reality. This is an option. They can come back in Nirmanakaya form out of compassion for us, for sentient beings. They don't have to, and not all of them do. And in fact, when we study the death teachings at some point, you'll find that there's a point in the dying process when the person who is dying, if they have practiced thoroughly in this lifetime and achieved enlightenment, there's a moment where that's called the mother-child moment in the death process. It's the very end of the death process before the individual starts to go through the process of being reborn, which is another lengthy process, or at least it's detailed. And at that moment, that mother-child moment, what happens is that the person who has practiced in this lifetime and achieved enlightenment, they see it. And it's like a child seeing its mother, they say. And at that point, the individual can leap into the mother's lap, and the aspirant and the reality are joined. And at that point, that individual may never come back. They may just become part of reality, part of this space of reality. But if they don't, they will go on and into different possibilities and stages for rebirth, which we're not going to go into here, and in different realms, in different levels of reality. This is all detailed in the Bardo teachings, which we really ought to take a look at sometime. They're really pretty terrific.
Well, I suppose I may be using like a different understanding of the three bodies, the Trikaya, because it's talked about in many different ways.
It is.
So like what the perspective I'm coming from is that we all have these three kayas. So well, let's start here. Is it in fact the Nirmanakaya, or that particular body, that is reborn? What is it? What wouldn't that be the body that's reborn if Tülku means Nirmanakaya, or no?
Yes, I suppose so. In reborn into, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So then,
And they reborn out of compassion. So the Nirmanakaya is synonymous with compassion, which is not a feeling sorry for, it's a love. It's one of the main principles of the universe. The universe has these three dominating principles. One is that nothing has any true being. It's just open space in which everything is arising and passing away. The arising and passing away, in doing so, what arises and passes communicates its being, its qualities. That's the Sambhogakaya. And as it arises and passes away, it takes a form, which is the Nirmanakaya. And so the form has the qualities, and yet it has no true existence. It's a constant changing. That's the
okay,
Dharmakaya.
So now can you talk about this connection that the Tülku makes with their heart disciple in terms of the Nirmanakaya? Or, well, actually you don't have to necessarily, but I'm interested in how, what actually is going on there if both the Tülku and the heart disciple are reborn as Tülkus.
The Tülku.
I want to understand that connection more. That what's going on.
Well, supposedly, the person who is enlightened, who is dying, injects his essence, his or her essence, into another person that they have selected. And then when that person dies, they are reborn as the first teacher. Okay?
Okay, so you would use the word essence instead.
Yeah. Enlightened mind. This is the idea of a lucid Tülku.
Okay, so the Tülku obviously isn't giving up their essence entirely. They're just injecting something of it.
Yes, they're not giving up anything. They don't have to give it up. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
That was it. Unmistaken child. Laura got it. That's the movie about a person setting off, a Tibetan fellow setting off to find the reincarnation of his teacher.
Meg has her hand up for a while.
Actually, it was Kurt on Meg's screen. Um, it's just a little piece. It was an interesting story. I think it was on the PBS NewsHour or 60 Minutes, something like that. That they found this young Tulka in, I think, up in Don's area, up in Minnesota. I don't know if anyone has heard of that. And it's a fascinating story. And this young boy, he's probably about 12 years old now, and he's just yeah, I guess they've claimed that he's a Tulka, found him, and he's just drawn to the study. And it's a fascinating story with him and his parents. And they are, I forgot where he's from, but anyhow, that wasn't what I was going to ask. I was curious, what you know of what the Dalai Lama has been saying, that he's saying that he's choosing not to come back as a teacher. There's some claim that he's, or some statement that he's saying that the
I don't know.
that system is having a single a one person Lama is not serving in some way. Do you have any thoughts on that, or knowledge on it?
No, I don't know
Remind
anything
me
about it.
what Sarah brought up the other day, that the next Buddha will be a Sangha, and it sounds like he's speaking to that.
I don't know anything about it. Anybody else?
I thought it might be related to the disappearance of the Panchen Lama. I don't. Does that ring a bell? I don't know.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's going to get very complicated, isn't it? As the Tibetans die off and the Chinese communists promote their versions of the Tülku, the next Dalai Lama. Who knows?
Yeah, there's I know that Dalai Lama did say that he thought perhaps he would not be reincarnated. I have heard that. And also, I'm trying to remember the name of this Lama who is also a filmmaker who
Songsar Kensei.
Yes, that I just yesterday saw a little clip of him saying that he thought that the whole Tülku system might actually simply not be relevant anymore outside of Tibet. So who knows?
Well, Trungpa Rinpoche had 2 sons by his wife, his British wife, Diana. And both of them are supposedly Tulkus. One of them is very damaged mentally, and he's been taken care of all his life. And the other is Mott. His name is Gesar Mukpo. Mukpo was Trungpa Rinpoche's clan name. And Gesar made a movie about Tulkus in the West, including himself and some other people like him, because he's a Tülku. In fact, Gesar Mukpo is the rebirth, supposedly, of Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen, Trungpa Rinpoche's own guru. And you can see that movie. I find it rather sad for this reason, that these people, some of whom are Westerners, Caucasians, Americans who have been recognized as being Tulkus, they don't have the cultural context that existed in Tibet to support them. And so they're kind of alone and loners, cut off. You feel that about Gesar himself and the others as well. but it's out there, that movie. I forget the title. Do you know him?
It's called Tülku.
Tülku. It's called Tülku.
Yep, and it's on Amazon Prime, and that's where I got that quote from, by the way.
Oh,
And yeah, it's very poignant. He actually talks to four other Tülkus, so there are five of them in this movie who are all Westerners. One of them was from Denmark, and then there's Gesar and his brother, who was the son of his mother, and
his
two
name,
other.
his name was Tugtrug. Tugtrug.
And they and yeah, it's and you can see that with the exception of one of them seems to be inspired to really go back into the teachings, but they're all kind of lost. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really a question of where this is all going to go, the lineage. My feeling is that it's going to be passed down through Westerners at some point.
That's
Today,
the
there's still
feeling.
a lot of Tibetan Rinpoches around, but that will probably change with time.
That's my feeling is the lineage will continue through endeavors like ours, through the teachings. Seems to me because the thing is, with the Tibetan Tulku system, there was, Tulku was recognized at a very young age, and he went into a monastery and grew up there, being immersed in the trainings and the culture and everything. So it's very different for somebody born in Minnesota who says, "Well, you're a Tulku." Now
Oh
what?
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, Gesar didn't receive nearly the training that a person like Sakni Rinpoche or Khandro Rinpoche or Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche, those people went to school. It's called the Shedra. Shedra means the school to train a Rinpoche, a Tulku, for years, many years, 15, 20, 15, 18 years. They were in school studying the Dharma and practicing too. So, yeah, it's a real question. Did you have something, Kurt?
No, I was just
Can't hear you.
sorry. I was just thinking, Vicky. She found that that piece. She put it in chat about the Minnesota kid. It's a sweet story, if nothing else.
But it is
Michael,
important to realize that enlightened people, in this is the lore, enlightened people did not have to come back, and often did not. The ones who did it out of compassion, for sentient beings. They were drawn back. I asked Trungpa Rinpoche once, I said, I sort of imagine it's like their death interrupted a conversation and they wanted to come back to continue it because they were enjoying the conversation and the relationship. And he sort of said, yes, that was what he indicated, yeah. But many of my enlightened teachers who just disappear.
Michael and Jinyi.
I have just a quick question related to what you were saying and what we were discussing. So, if a realized person dissolves into Dharmakaya when they pass, and instead of taking rebirth, do they continue to benefit sentient beings in some way? And if so, how?
What kind of a person? I'm sorry, Shini.
If a realized person, they attain realization and they dissolve into Dharmakaya after they pass, which is that a lot of the people who attain enlightenment did, then do they still benefit sentient beings in some ways?
I don't know. Anybody, Michael, you have a thought on that?
There is a long gap between the passing of the 16th Karmapa and the birth of the 17th Karmapa. And at one point we were told that he was manifesting as protector. in that period of time, so that he hadn't taken a Nirmanakaya form, but that he was performing some kind of benefit for beings, acting as Mahakala. The other thing I was going to say, just as, I think some of these things are, kind of beyond rational comprehension, but it always interested me that in the Tülku tradition in Tibet, that, for instance, Trungpa Rinpoche's family was not a wealthy or aristocratic family at all. And that there wasn't like, like a royal lineage succession like there is in royal families of Europe, that Tulkus could be born anywhere and found anywhere. I think that was definitely true for Trungpa Rinpoche. I believe it might have been true for the Karmapa as well, that they would, be reborn in families that were otherwise, not particularly aristocratic in any way. But then also you have situations where you want, like Tölku Ujin had 5 sons, all who became, brilliant Rinpoches. Mingyur Rinpoche, Tsuki Nima, Sukni Rinpoche, forgotten a couple of the others. But in any case, it's beyond, as I say, I think it's somewhat beyond any kind of, conventional thought we have to lean into in order to try to grasp some of these things.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, do they just dissolve? Where did they go?
Well, yes, they just dissolved. I mean, before the Tibetans started recognizing rebirths and calling them Nirmanakayas or Tulkus, there were many, many enlightened people in India from the time of the Buddha on, and there was no Tulku system. They weren't recognized. So where did they go? Who knows? But that went on the system in Tibet started with the Nyingmas, Padmasambhava, that's in the 8th century AD. Meanwhile, Buddhism has been evolving and producing enlightened teachers since the time of the Buddha, which was 640 to 560 BC. So that's a period of what, over 1,000 years. No Tulku system in place then.
We do have 5 people with their hands up.
This is great. You pick it, Barry.
Oh, Steve.
Yeah, one of the things I've always liked is that the way Trungpa Rinpoche kind of said that the 6 realms were different psychological states. What I'm trying to figure out is how does the Tölku system fit into that? Seeing the realms as psychological.
Steve, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Your voice is very fuzzy. Something about the 6 realms and the.
Yeah. So, can you guys hear me now? I'm really close to the mic.
I don't know. Give it a try.
Yeah, go ahead. We just have to listen.
Well, I could type it.
No, try it again.
Okay. So I liked how the 6 realms can be seen as psychological states. So, like, how does the Tölku system fit into seeing the realms as psychological states? Is my question. That's something I'm trying to wrap my head around. Did that come through?
Not for me, but maybe for somebody else. Can repeat it.
I'll type it. It's fine.
I think you said the 6 realms.
Yeah, I heard that.
As psychological states. How does that relate to that part? I didn't quite get the Nirmanakaya.
How does it relate to the Tölku system? He asked.
Well, the Tulkus go through the realms, helping those people, those confused people. I mean, not the Tulkus, Buddhas do. Any enlightened being doesn't have to be a Tülku, just that there are enlightened beings who inhabit these realms to help the beings. And generally what they're helping them do is move towards the human realm so that they can practice the Dharma, because really only human beings can practice the Dharma and achieve enlightenment. So in the other realms, they're helping them to move towards that realm, the human realm.
My impression is that's what's inspired Steve's question. He's asking if there's some sort of connection with this idea of the three realms as psychological states that all of us have to the Tülku system.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are three interpretations for the realms. One is that we're actually born into a physical realm. So all of us here are born into the human realm, as opposed to your dogs and your cats who are born into the animal realm. And supposedly, if we could see them, there are the God realms and the hell realms and so forth. And people are born into those just as we're born into the human realm. The second interpretation has to do with our mentality. So you can be born a human being, but have the mentality of a god. And you might imagine somebody very wealthy or famous, or maybe a movie star, or somebody, might have the mentality of a god, although there are many of those who are neurotic too and unhappy, but they might. And the mentality of a god is that everything they see is beautiful, everything they experience is wonderful, and there is bliss. As opposed to the mentality of a hell being, where everything they see is a threat and pain and suffering and produces anger. And this can go on for a whole lifetime. This is your mentality. Or it can go on for years within a lifetime and change slowly. And then there's the third mentality, understanding of the realm, which is that you might be walking down the street and somebody comes up to you and gives you a compliment, and you feel really elated, and you're suddenly in the God realm for a minute, or two. Or somebody comes up and insults you, and you're plunged into anger and hatred of the hell realm. So that these realms have these three modalities: the actual birth, the mentality that persists over years, and then the momentary mentality. Buddhas help us get out of all of them. That's what enlightened Buddhas are for.
We have Don and Ed.
Okay. Don, you want to take it?
A couple questions. One is on the heels of Janine's question, which is that if someone decides to move on, like to dissolve in a Dharmakaya, well, wouldn't that be breaking their bodhisattva vow?
My understanding is that it's way beyond that. This is in the realm of reality. And they may even do good from the Dharmakaya.
Yeah. The other question I was curious about was my understanding, I think, and it was brought up here, I think maybe you brought it up, John, was that there's the next incarnation of the Trungpa, I think, is living in Nepal or Tibet.
Tibet.
And if that's the case, correct my thinking, but like if that's the case, why wouldn't everybody like say from Vajradhatu run out and like grab him and like bring him over to the U.S. and say, all right, pick up where you left off. Here's the 3 volumes you wrote. Like, take it away. You know what I mean?
I don't know, but I know that I do have friends who have gone over there and met him.
Oh.
Oh yeah, quite a few. Oh, absolutely. I had dinner with a couple of them about a month or two ago.
So would that be like one, like it sounds like an incarnation or a rebirth can manifest in multiple people. So could that just be one manifestation of Chogyam Trungpa amongst others?
That's a good thought. I hadn't had that thought. Maybe there's a Japanese scientist around as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Ed.
Thank you. Following on Jenny's question and Don's comments on that, whether dissolution of an enlightened being into the Dharmakaya can aid sentient beings in this life, I think that it really has to. And the reason I say that is because when we meditate, we after the end of meditation, we dedicate our merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. And during the meditation, it's possible for us to, even if only for seconds or instants, achieve some sort of state of enlightenment. What a dissolved sentient being, if you will, in Dharmakaya does would be similar to that, to the extent we can conceive as humans of what Dharmakaya is. So, and isn't Dharmakaya a fundamental basis for the enlightenment of all sentient beings? So as a result, whatever application of Dharmakaya is encountered has to be for the benefit, I would think, of all sentient beings. A little Jesuitical there, but.
Okay. I mean, you have to understand, in reality, none of us actually have any solitary individual existence. This is what the Dharma tells us. The sense of ego and self-separateness is an illusion, a mistake. Dharmakaya is reality. Belief in a self is not, according to the teachings. So we're trying to imagine or understand how these two come together. You know, these two very conflicting notions. We're in some difficult and deep waters.
Jane has her hand up.
Okay. Jane? Oh, Jane, there you are.
If a tulka is enlightened, is that being still suffering?
Yes. Yes. They say that the Buddha suffered because of past karma. Until all the karma is burned out, until all the karma is used up, there is still suffering. But it is suffering from past karma, but it's not, they're not neurotic.
Okay.
So they have to go through death, which is painful. Might get sick. The Karmapa did, the 16th Karmapa. I had a friend in the Sangha, his name's Don Milani, and Don was attending the 16th Karmapa as he was dying of cancer in a hospital in Chicago. And Don related that he was sitting on a cushion on the floor next to the Karmapa's bed, crying. And suddenly he felt a hand on top of his head. And he looked up, and the Karmapa was smiling at him. And the Karmapa said to him, "Don't worry, nothing happens."
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. Really beautiful. Karmapa was just full of love and joy. I had the privilege of teaching the Karmapa how to play Pong. I don't know if any of you remember. Pong was one of the very first television computer games. And you hooked up these two consoles to your TV set. And what appeared on the TV set were two paddles, one on either side. One belonged to you and one belonged to your opponent. And there was a net in between them and a ball that bounced over, and you had to hit the ball with your paddle, and you moved a controller like here. And what happened was that I had volunteered along with another friend of mine, Jim Drescher, to serve. The Karmapa was in a house here in Boulder, a big mansion that we had rented for him with his monks. And Jim and I had volunteered to entertain the monks. And we brought in this Pong game. And we had a little room there where we were serving them drinks and cookies or whatever, snacks. And we set up the Pong game, and they were all playing Pong, the monks. Suddenly, there's a message that, you see, Jamgon Kongtrul, the reincarnation of Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen, who died in an automobile accident in India some years later, he was traveling with the Karmapa. And the two of them were at the other end of the hall up on the second floor where we were. And they had gotten wind of this game. I guess some monks went in and told them about it. And the message came back, they wanted to play. They wanted us to bring it down. So Jim and I took the game down. And I put it in front of the Karmapa, and Jim put it in front of Jamgon Kongtrul. And the Karmapa was trying to play it, and then he had me play it for him. And he kept banging me on the head and saying, "Oh, very good, very good." Like that. It was pretty funny. So a moment of intimacy with the Karmapa, if you could call it that. That was about 1975, I think. But I think that thing he said to Don Milani about "don't worry, nothing happens," that's a real teaching. And maybe it addresses some of the questions that have been coming up here. Because the world of the Dharmakaya is a very different kind of proposition than what we're talking about. We think of ourselves as discrete entities traveling through this world, universe. And what it's saying is that's a myth. It's a dream.
Vicky.
Yes, and on that note, that our belief that we're distinct entities is a myth, is an illusion, and that we're all much more connected. What about dream life? We spend nearly half of our lives in a dream state. Everybody's different. I have known people who never remember their dreams. I have, throughout my entire life, been totally in touch with my dreams and conscious of them and remembering them. And there's lots of material in there in terms of not being distinct at all. Could it be that, that's as much of a reality as when we're walking around awake, and in some ways, because you heal a lot at night when you're dreaming, the body's healing and everything else, but could that be, it just occurred to me, maybe we're not always feeling distinct. Maybe there's this big portion of our lives when we're conscious sometimes, but when we're meditating, trying to become egoless. But what about dream life? Does Chogyam say is there anything discussed about that?
Michael, do you have anything? Never heard Trungpa Rinpoche talk about dream work, but he might have. There is an area of the Buddhist teachings called dream yoga, and you work with dream. And I have not studied dream yoga. It's connected with the Bardo teachings too.
Yeah, it's connected with the idea of lucid dreaming, but I think their dreams are worked with in different ways, but one way is understanding that when we're in a dream, we take everything to be real, even though it's clearly just mind. And that it's said that our waking state is exactly the same way.
I've had lots of dreams where I all of a sudden question whether it's real, and immediately everything changes. I've sort of crossed that line many times in my dreams.
Then that's maybe a flash of lucid dreaming, which is, sort of what the practice is to actually recognize that the dream world is, an expression of mind. And as opposed to approaching what we normally do, which is to experience dreams in a dualistic way, which is why we get terrified of certain appearances, attracted to others, just like we do in waking life.
And there's many other traditions, in India and Native American, where dreams are a big part of spiritual development and life.
And there's an American who is part of our Sangha, but I don't know if he's actually connected with Trungpa Rinpoche. His name is Andrew Holacek, and he's done a lot of work on dreams. He's studied with some teachers, and he's written at least one book on it. And you might look him up. It's Holocchek, I think, or Cek, Holacek.
Vicky put it in chat.
I put it in chat. Vicky, I did a retreat with him last summer, and this is what all of his books are about. And so he sees, just what Michael said, lucid dreaming and dream yoga really is a way to practice for the bardo. And it is very much, it's the same, you're already there, but it's that same practice of just recognizing that, right, things are not exactly as they seem.
Right. Yeah. And I would assume there's a lot of people who do that naturally. In other words, I was never taught. I taught myself to fly in dreams when I was a child. All the stuff. So yeah.
Both my kids tell me the same. Amazing.
Thanks.
It's also a course in multiculturalism, and one of the points made is that different cultures have different ways of determining what's reality. So that, for our, Western civilization, it's the scientific method, but that there are cultures for whom the dream world is as real or more real.
Oh, yeah.
And that, for instance, there was one of the Native American tribe, I believe the Iroquois, who were basically saved as a nation. not without obviously significant damage, but are still fairly intact, precisely because of the visions of one of their shaman 200-300 years ago. Kind of an interesting piece of history.
Yeah, dreams are very important in the Tibetan teachings too. When you get into what are called the Bardo teachings, which people mostly associate with death, but Bardo just means interval. Literally means bar is from and do is to. So from to. So there's the interval of this meeting that we're having right now, this class. There's a Bardo. But there are three main Bardos of life and three of death. The three Bardos of death are the painful Bardo of dying. Then there's the Bardo of reality. And then there's the Bardo of becoming, which is the famous 49-day Bardo, where you are taking rebirth over a period of 49 days. But the Bardos of life are, first of all, the Bardo of life itself, which extends from the moment you are conceived to the moment you contract the condition that's going to kill you. That's the Bardo of life, the interval of life. And within that, there is the Bardo of meditation, which you experience every time you sit down to meditate, or whenever you go into meditation, walking, sitting, whatever. And the third Bardo of life is the Bardo of dream. So it's very important.
Yeah, I like the idea that this path that I'm on, it can be working while I'm asleep and dreaming. I don't have to just rely on when I'm awake and meditating. I want as many opportunities as I can. So I'm glad. It just seems like that's a natural one. So thanks.
Lane again, okay?
I forgot who mentioned past life regression earlier. So it's a subject I've been interested in lately. When I was a young child, I had a couple of dreams which seemed to indicate something of my past life. And I've become interested in it lately because I've gotten some other inclinations. And I was just wondering if anyone has any recommendations along those lines, if anyone has any experience exploring that.
I did have at least one dream where one was pretty frightening. It was most definitely a past life thing. I don't know, someone came and I was lying and I couldn't move, and someone came and they were pulling a ring off my finger. I think I was a dead corpse, and someone, there was a grave robber or something. It was just really utterly odd.
Anybody else?
Meg has her hand up.
I just had a quick question, and I hope this is relevant, but I'm just kind of curious, and you're talking with various teachers and Trungpa Rinpoche, if there's any stance against, if they're anti-abortion because of reincarnation and Tülkus and so forth.
I can tell you about Trungpa Rinpoche.
Yeah.
He was very against abortion, except when it was medically necessary for the health of the person. And he was just because you're killing another sentient being. And he felt that it would be, but there are a number of his students who had abortions nonetheless, and sometimes with his approval because of the circumstances. He wasn't rigid about it. This wasn't like a matter of religious principle or something.
Do you know if that's a pretty typical stance among Tibetan teachers?
I only know about him.
Thanks.
I would imagine that it was somewhat typical because Tibetans are, adaptive. They adapt to the needs of the individual in a reasonable way. And at the same time, there's the sanctity of life and the consequences of taking it. So, there were people who I know among Trungpa Rinpoche students who had abortions with his approval. And in fact, he even approved, more than approved, he almost participated in one student taking his own life, because he had a disease that was hereditary. And this disease turns you into a vegetable. And it's, what's it called?
Huntington's.
Huntington's. That's it, Huntington's. And this individual, who was a friend of mine, actually, it ran in his family. And the story was that you didn't know if you were going to get it. If you got to 40, if you arrived at the age of 40 and hadn't shown any symptoms, you were home free. But the symptoms came on for my friend at about the age of, in his late 30s. And they were brutal. He was jaundiced. He was a brilliant human being, and he lost his ability to put rational sentences together. Huntington's is a really brutal disease. And Trungpa Rinpoche gave him permission to take his own life. His mother had spent 30 or 40 years in a chair, motionless. And my friend didn't want to wind up that way. And in fact, Rinpoche my friend took his life with pills on top of Marpa Point at Drala Mountain Center in a cabin up there. And Rinpoche and another friend of mine went to say goodbye to him. And she said that watching the two of them was one of the most electric moments of her life. And then they left, and my friend took his life. He'd actually spent the week with me here in Boulder before he did that, and I didn't know he was going to. He told me he was going to go up to what was then Rocky Mountain Dharma Center to do a retreat. And after he left, my wife called me and said, he's not coming back. She knew. So these things happen.
And on that note,
On that cheery note.
it's time to go.
It is. So we'll put up the chants, and who's leading? I've forgotten already.
It was, but my internet connection seems really unstable. Does somebody else want to jump in?
Meg, great. Thank you, Meg. Here, I'll put the chants up, and we'll mute all.
We'll close with a prayer for peace, and then we'll dedicate the merit earned by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Meg, unmute yourself, please.
By the blessings of the enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth, the abundance of
well-being.
May all learn to live lovingly with each other.
By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy of wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdom's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John. and
Thank you,
Barry.
John.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Good night,
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, John. Good night.
Good night. Yeah. That was interesting, huh? Philip.
I'm having problems with my computer. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
Well, thank you all. It was a very interesting meeting tonight, and basically has left me speechless. But I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
I feel like it was we entered a realm of magic.
Really? Yes. Yeah, I've been feeling that ever since last spring with the meeting of the minds with you. It's an entirely new space, and it's beyond words. It's so hard to talk about, and yet it's where I want to be all the time. Yeah.
It's a very different realm, isn't it? It's it changes a lot. Maybe almost everything. Who we are, what this is all about.
Absolutely every single thing. Yes, everything, even time, certainly space, our notion of whether or not we're individuals, our own consciousness, sharing consciousness, everything, absolutely everything. It's astounding. It's like this bottomless well of pure water.
That's an interesting metaphor. Yeah.
So thank you so much for all your teaching. It's
Thank you.
Amazing, wonderful thing.
Thank you for being here and everything. We're going to we're trying to figure out how to start up a new track with volume 1 again, because there are people who are coming who are new. I've got it. And we want to involve a number of people to teach.
I would be happy to help out any way I could. Continuing the metaphor of the bottomless well of pure water, what else would you want to do except to share this with people? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good
I think
night.
I can sign off. Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's still, oh, it's working. Okay. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.